What if I told you that you do not escape, fall deeper into it? When I first heard about this year's TEDx, the mold, and I thought about it in an unconventional way. Let me challenge you by asking, if you thought about the mold identity, and I propose the idea that as we progress out the span of our lives, the mold, but simply it. Nnaggenda, and I'm currently reshaping. We're born into a society that has very wide labels for how we categorize, and we think that imagine yourself within a pottery shop. The ceramist of the shop makes only 3 types of pot molds: flower molds, rainbow molds, and dinosaur molds. As the mold ages throughout the shop, it interacts with molds that are different and similar to its own. Now picture yourself as the flower mold. You decide to have meaningful, deep conversations with the rainbow molds. You spend a little time living with the dinosaur molds, and you undergo the same struggles as other flower molds. After a couple of years, you decide that there's more to you than being just a flower pot mold, and you decide to reshape your mold and become a rainbow mold. Naturally, the ceramist of the shop moves you to live amongst other rainbow molds. The only difference between you and the other rainbow molds is that instead of clouds at the end of your rainbow, you have flowers. Now, to put this, our parents and society are the ceramist of the shop, and we are. At a very young age, our parents craft and build our identity to fit what they deem is acceptable within society. Span of our lives, and we interact with new people and consume information and are around us, we add new things to our identity to better encapsulate who we are and what we and patterns. The concept behind these dolls is that they descend in more parts. We move deeper into the doll, from one doll into another, from the biggest. Being raised in an all-girls household, there are certain expectations that my sisters and I have on how we should behave. There are certain responsibilities and cultural practices that we must adhere to. Mind that if I didn't learn how to cook or clean or keep track of groceries, I wouldn't be able to run a successful home and care for my husband and children in the future. Within my culture, it's customary for women to kneel down when greeting their elders as a sign of respect. But I noticed that this courtesy didn't extend to the men in my lives. This realization made me understand I am that I was in. At the age of 8, that I was more than just a woman, I was a Black woman. And growing up, I was surrounded by Black women, from my mom to my aunts to my cousins, and even the women I saw selling fruits and vegetables. Idols of Miley Cyrus and Selena Gomez, I realized there weren't many women that looked like me on television, or the way I couldn't recreate their hairstyles unless I straightened my hair. And even when I did that, my curls didn't last long, because when my hair got wet, my curls would return. And my mom was strictly. It was also the subtle things in the way that my sisters and I would get complimented from being light. Learned that being light was The way that when we're in nursery and primary school, we were told to color in the drawings that we made, and we had to use the peach skin tone. Or the way most of the dolls that I owned were white. This realization sent me out of the biggest size Matryoshka doll into a smaller doll I painted a deep shade of brown. Towards the age of 12 was when I realized my black womanhood isn't the same as everyone else's, despite the similar shared experiences that caused me to be in the same category as other black women. During this time, I was in my first boarding school, and when I got there, I thought of mean, rude, and other pre-stipulated misconceptions of black women. But how I realized my black was the way it was common at school to hypersexualize the bodies of black women. And I would see this in the way my friends were treated and how the dress code applied differently for them. My friends were dress coded more because their body was considered too curvaceous and it would attract the attention of male counterparts. How they were considered too mature and less innocent, even though we were the mere ages of 12 to 14. I, on the other hand, didn't really experience this because of how I looked at the time. And this realization helped me reshape the mold the mold of a black woman. So, by peeling back the frameworks of the larger size doll to a smaller doll I reshaped to become a black woman, I did so to better fit into a doll I didn't make myself, but rather reshape. This is true for identity, where you move inwards rather than outwards as you discover more parts of yourself. And this brings me back to my you never break the mold by simply reshape it, where you transform broader identities of who you are, in this case, the broader identities of being a woman, and you reshape it to become, to fit more within who you are. So I enter the doll of being a woman, and I reshape it and I reshape the next doll, become a black woman. And if I was to take a step further into the current doll that I'm in at the age of 17, I would call myself a black feminist woman. Now, keep in mind that you don't forgo your mold. You forgo the patterns and designs already painted onto your doll. You just add more aspects to it. You shed the deeper, as you shed the larger pieces of the biggest doll for understanding of yourself to better fit within a mold that you didn't make. The idea of never leaving your mold may sound quite daunting. And we always try to answer this million-dollar question, who are you? We never realize that we subconsciously answer this question by discovering more parts of ourselves. I say mountains because they've found themselves within. As I look at the sunrises and sunsets from the bench of my hostel, to be where it is. So, and this brings me back to my point of never break the mold by simply reshape it, in the sense that we move away from the bigger picture and into a more concentrated area that encapsulates pre-stipulated misconceptions of who we are and what to better fit into a mold. Agents of free will, but what if we in fact are conformists to our mold? Because it makes us feel more assured in who we are and our place in society. As you discover more parts of yourself and your identity, you keep moving deeper and deeper into your mold until it fits like second skin. You move deeper. It's often forgotten that as people, we're not so easily defined, and the end goal if we were to move outwards, more vague gray area with words that are too big to encapsulate who we are. Yes, you are a woman, but you're more than that. Yes, you are a man, but you are more than that. Rather, we should look into a more area that has the finer details of who we are, until you can proudly say, this is my identity. Until you can add more aspects to your pot mold. And this is why you never truly leave your mold. Thank you.